Hi guys, we're getting pretty deep into Season 3 now, with only 3 games left. Last week we had Joust, released by Williams Electronics in 1982, and this was a selection from Andrew, who finally had one of his games come up, after having his selections boosted in probability 4 times previously. This game was also selected by Ye Older Gamer Steve, so that's the second of his games to pop up. For the competition as a whole though, Joust probably wasn't the best game to have. Andrew is extremely good at it, and was always going to be tough, or impossible to beat. Andrew recorded some tips on strategy that I cut together and can be seen on my channel. For me, I'd never played Joust before, and I'd say I've developed a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. The game is definitely fun, with an unusual and enjoyable concept, but it's one of those games that's highly frustrating, and one of the most rage-inducing games that we've had from my perspective. One of the reasons for that is there is such a small margin between defeating an enemy or being killed yourself, given that the result of an encounter is down to the relative vertical positioning. This means that you need excellent control of your character, when the physics are very floaty and difficult to get on top of, and the enemies quickly become more aggressive with their tracking of you. I think once you're able to get on top of this, there is the potential to have very long play sessions, as we've seen with Andrew, but getting to that point certainly isn't easy. Doing a bit of reading, and a Joust 2 game was released, but other than improved graphics, it's generally looked upon unfavourably relative to the original, with a vertically mounted screen and adjusted game mechanic. Charlie Farr certainly panned it during his stream, and this game has never seen a home port, which is pretty telling. Now, let's see by how much Andrew has beaten us all. This week, we've only had 12 submissions, but everyone who did play gave it a good go. It wasn't as easygoing as it could have been for Andrew, as we saw the return of Charlie Farr. Generally, he's been the winner of each round when he's played, but we've not seen a submission since the first round of Season 2, which was 4 months ago now. I watched his run which he streamed on Twitch, and for those that aren't familiar with him, I'd recommend checking out his channel, as he's extremely good at video games. With an unusual game this week, we've seen a bit of a mix-up in the scores. Mark, who usually does pretty well, is down in 12th. In 11th, we've got Retro Arcade Challenge, who was unlucky to miss out on his first points, after Big Juffer squeezed him out last night. His video on YouTube is well worth a watch, as he really didn't get on with this game. To be honest, 12th through to Milthy in 6th were all pretty close, and this was Milthy's best finish of the season so far. 10 Shearers is down in an uncharacteristic 5th, but still did pretty well. Robert Morrison has his best finish of the season in 4th, with a decent 140,000 points, and Wee Bob is just ahead in 3rd, with another good result for him. Our top 2 are way out in front though. I mentioned Charlie Farr returning with this game, and he submitted a score of 1.4 million, nearly 10 times more than Bob in 3rd, and this was only his 3rd or 4th run after not playing the game for over a year. This at least set a reasonable benchmark for Andrew to beat, and this week's winner comes as a surprise to no one, with a final score of 2.7 million and telling me that he could have played for longer but needed to stop, once again is Andrew. Congrats again to Andrew, and now that we've had Joust, we never have to have it again, which is a positive thing, I guess. Regarding the distribution of the scores, with a histogram again, we can see just how far ahead Charlie Farr and Andrew were. There are 5 bins separating them from the pack. Within the main group of players, really there are only 2 groups, that 50 to 90,000 point group that I mentioned, and then the 130 to 150,000 group. This has been a bit of a strange week, with lots of people doing similarly to each other, making this distribution pretty far from being normally distributed, like we've seen in some weeks. The changes to the overall rankings have all been down at the bottom of the table. A strong result for Milthy has moved him ahead of Panther. Charlie Farr has gone straight into 11th with that 2nd place this week, and Robert's excellent 4th place this week has moved him into the top 10. Further up the table, positions are beginning to look fairly set, with gaps separating everyone, where it's going to take a decent effort to catch and pass the person ahead. Bob has extended his lead over Big Juffer in 3rd, 10 Shearers is now 31 points ahead of Bob in 2nd, but 35 points clear at the top is still Andrew. There are 75 points still to play for, so he is catchable, but it's looking less and less likely that will be happening, especially if we see some more Charlie Farr entries. So with this week wrapped up, let's see what the next game will be. I've got the games loaded in once again. Let's hope Joust was the only game Andrew will get this season, but his games are boosted once again, so has the highest chance of them coming up. Even so, it's only around 13%, so still more likely that someone else gets a choice. I'm hoping for a vertical scrolling shmup this week, so let's set things going and see what we get. Okay, and we'll hit it again. Okay, so we've got Volfied from Ian. I've never heard of this game. I don't know anything about it. I'm going to go look it up, make a little video. I'll be back shortly. So, this week's game is Volfied. Volfied? I have no idea how to pronounce it, but it was released in 1989 by Taito. It turns out this is the sequel to the classic puzzle game Kicks, another game with a ridiculous name not immediately obvious how you're supposed to pronounce it. Volfied takes the simple Kicks puzzle mechanic and adds in extra action elements. The presentation is obviously much nicer than the original, which is what you'd expect for 1989. This game adds in power-ups and a bigger range of enemies to the original. I've not played Kicks that much, but I do enjoy it. Let's see how this one goes. The first level is pretty straightforward, but difficulty seems to pick up with the second onwards. This is another unusual game, so we'll see if it mixes things up. I'm certainly a fan of the puzzle genre, but I'd rather we had a vertical shmup. Finally, a point on modern game assists. With emulation, there are the options to assist the game experience. I thought I'd clarify what I consider acceptable and what's not. Pausing is fine. Andrew's run on Joust would have taken over an hour, and sometimes nature calls. Autofire is a controversial one, but unless we have a game like Hypersports, I'm going to say it's okay. None of us are getting any younger, and hammering a button doesn't do anyone's wrists or hands any good. Save states are another enhancement, and for a scoring run, these unsurprisingly aren't allowed. But if you want to use a save to practice a certain section, then that's fine. But submitted runs need to be single and continuous. So, I hope you're all playing some Volfied, and I'll be back next week with the scores. See you then.